All righty. Good afternoon, Generation W. Welcome back to Refresh. And as you know, this is a time to connect, be inspired, to learn something new, and ultimately feel a bit better about ourselves and this time we spent together. So how is everybody? I got to tell you, I'm happy to be celebrating with you 2 days in advance, I may add, International Women's Day, which is officially Friday, March 8th this year. Each year there's a campaign theme, and this year is Inspire Inclusion. Here's the pose right here, a little heart, everybody. You want to join me? Take a picture, post it. Thank you, Basma. Thank you, Roya. Here it is, Inspire Inclusion. And I have to tell you candidly, I feel that we celebrate, we honor, and most importantly, do the work that this day globally brings to the fore at Generation W every day. I say that humbly, I say it proudly. And there was a word I was looking for, like to add to the third, the kind of like 1, 2, 3. And I couldn't come up with it. Roya's a writer. Maybe she can help me with it. Because I feel that energy that comes from wanting to do more, right? I want to do more now, more quicker, more broadly, and more impactfully. And that can lead to frustration. So I'm looking for that frustration inspired word. And yet, frustration can lead to do more good work. And so, speaking of good work, we take to heart the calls of action on behalf of women. And on April 5th, Generation W, the theme Believe will be happening. And in the spirit of inclusivity, of course, everybody is welcome, of course. And I hope to see you there. We have great speakers. We're going to really delve into belief, how it can bring us together, right? That's really what we want to do. Today, we're offering a very special ticket offer to honor International Women's Day. So today to Friday, Mom, I know you love a good sale. It would be a great time to purchase your tickets. As an event, I am sure that our guests can attest to can be life enriching. Both Roya and Basma have been on the Generation W stage. As you'll hear from them today, you'll know the quality of the thinking, of the thoughtfulness, of the passion, of the heart of the people. This day, International Women's Day, was founded in 1911. So it's been over 100 years of working towards elevating the lives of women from around the world. Dare I say that's where some of the frustration comes? I'm an athlete. I'm a competitor. We got to do better. Why? Because as we say at Generation W, when you elevate women, you elevate us all. And then when you extract that belief in the spirit of belief, when all of us elevate each other, we are all better off. And today, I have to say, there are two outstanding women of the world who are here to share how they are doing just that, right? They are committed to inspiring women to be included, where you create a sense of belonging, relevance, and empowerment, and creating a much more inclusive world for women, but for all of us. Their stories are incredible, and they're important for us because I think it's really important, especially as American women, to understand the plight, the story, the demands, the struggles, the triumphs of women who are not born here, who come here, who see our world in a different light, right? A light that can be helpful to us, as well as us understanding them as we build our global world of sisterhood. So I know you're going to be thrilled to meet, once again, Basma Alawee. She's an Iraqi-born, Florida-based activist, although she is truly a woman of the world. She just told me she just got back from Sydney. She fled with her family from Baghdad in 2010, and somehow, I don't know how she landed in Jacksonville, but we are very fortunate that she did. Once in the USA, she co-founded WeaveTales and helped to set up the Iraqi Family Organization. But currently, she's the deputy director of Community-Sponsored Hub, and she's going to tell us about her work around the world and the pressures and what she's seeing in terms of how we can help elevate women. And then Roya brought me, my heart, everyone to their feet. Last year at Generation W, she's a journalist, a lecturer, and a writer whose work often deals with the topics of exile, displacement, political and religious persecution, and the struggle of people, especially women, against authoritarianism. And I just got to tell you right here, this is really interesting. Here's one of my articles. I keep it on my desk, Roya. There's so many beautiful words, pearls of wisdom. So, for inspiration, I literally keep it on my desk. She wrote a book, her memoir, Journey from the Land of No, a girlhood caught in revolutionary Iran. And it details the rise of Islamic fundamentalism in her birth country in the aftermath of the 79 revolution. Roya arrived in the US as a refugee in 85. So Basma, she's beat you here by a good number of years, but totally understanding that you both carry where you're from, your experiences forward, right? So welcome. Great to see you. Both, I want to remind everybody that this is a collective conversation. We'll start off if everyone has comments on our Facebook, hi Facebook people, on our Zoom, please just write them in and we will get to you. So, Roya, let's start with you. How did you become a woman of the world?
Hi, I'm delighted to be with you, Donna, and then with your viewers. Generation W is one of the best experiences of my life, and that's in the context of the very many, many, many talks I've given. It was just so uplifting for me to be there with the other women who attended. So thank you for that, and thank you for today. It's a very great question you're asking. I guess the quickest answer is that I think, and I wonder whether Basma feels the same way. You know, as refugees, when we arrive in the United States, oftentimes we face one of two choices. Do we leave the past behind, or do we bring the past and weave it into our presence and our future? You know, I respect both choices because a lot of refugees feel like, you know, it's too heavy a burden to bring the past with you. But some of us make the choice of incorporating that, you know, the tragic life that we fled. And mine certainly was, you know, I fled a country that I, you know, had known as my birthplace and the birthplaces of as many generations before me as we could count. But I decided that I couldn't turn my back on the past, that not so much as a matter of moral decision, but as a point of my own, the clarity of my own thinking, the clarity of my own way forward. And so I think that helped me connect me to the past and kind of give me a blueprint for the present. I think it would have been very jarring to just do away with all that. So once you begin to say, you know, my Iranianness is part of me, and I will weave it into my Americanness and everything else that I will be or am, then you automatically connect yourself to, you know, to the tales of other people in the world who have come here, who have, you know, who have similar stories of uprooting themselves and transplanting themselves here. So I think the trick is to not shun who we are and where we come from, and to somehow work it into our presence.
So much power in all of that, which is I'm going to bring who I am with me into who I am now. And all of us have come from someplace else. We might be a couple of generations ahead of you, but right, all of us came from somewhere else. All right, let me just ask, and this idea, by the way, thematically of women of the world, and what all of us today who have the opportunity to share in this conversation and listen to it feel like they are women of the world, because that gives us a sense of responsibility, not only to ourselves, for each other. And Basma, my goodness, you landed here and you took on not only your local world, but now the world. How are you a woman of the world?
I mean, I am honored to hear that I am a woman of the world. I think I am really, really grateful, Donna, for always you uplifting and sharing your platform with us and trusting us in your present. I think, to be honest, I mean, Roya, what you shared is really important. I I really, you shared, Donna, that responsibility. And I think that's what lead us in this space and in the work is I felt responsible of being able to be saved, and to find a safe destination. I felt the responsibility and the guilt in the same time. Why me? Why I have that privilege? While over 130 displaced, 130 million, actually this year, there's over 130 million forcibly displaced human beings on Earth. I always really feel that guilt of like, why me, and how I can really transfer this to the responsibility that I want to make sure that we minimize forced displacement, we really fight the root cause of migration, and how we can really take part of welcoming, in being a good neighbor. The value that we all lived with. I think part of also why I joined Effort, because when I became a refugee in a new land, I thought that, okay, now I survived war, dictatorship, and hardship. Finally, now I am in a safe space. Let me breathe. But actually, I found out that I was not welcomed in spaces. I needed to tell people why, as a refugee, I am not choosing to take a space. I am not choosing where I am ending up in. And really my mind was like, okay, I am not welcomed in my home. I am not welcomed in the new home. What do I need to do? So the responsibility became, I really need to tell people the story, the real story, and educate the community about why refugees should have a chance to be welcomed, and to understand our struggle, and to paint the picture right, because our stories are not told in the way that we want it to be told. So I think part of like why WeaveTales was founded in Jacksonville is really to create a platform for refugees and immigrants to tell their stories. And we were able, through the organizations and its program, to tell over more than 300 stories in the US, and trained refugees and immigrants. I think we had over 50 refugees and immigrants trained to become public speakers. Many of them now TEDx speakers, really to get the word out about why we became refugees, why we are here in this land, and how we are contributing back and giving back. And I think my story is really like one from many. Many of the resiliency stories that I have been hearing every day. So I don't know. I also like really always think that of the term act locally and think globally. So like how we can do in Jacksonville, in the United States, to really solve the problem globally, because we are also part of the problem. So how we can continue to solve issues and problems from Jacksonville, from Florida, from the United States, to make sure we are part of the solution, not always the problem.
Yeah, I think that's important. And
Donna, can I just respond to
please,
Basma?
Roya, go ahead.
So I just realized, listening to Basma for the first time, that she's my employer. I'm working for her. I just didn't know that I am, because I wrote my most recent book is called The Beginner's Guide to America for the Immigrant and the Curious. And the reason I wrote this book was because, several years ago, when one of our presidential candidates started saying, America is full, we don't need any more immigrants, I thought, oh my God, what if he had been president when me and my family were trying to get in? He would have never let us in. And even though by the time I heard these words, I had been a US citizen, I had lived here longer than I had lived in Iran, it really, really, really terrified me. And I was shocked that after 20 plus years, I could hear those words and remember the fear of, having been a refugee, having been behind these borders, waiting for my visa to get approved. And then I decided that I have to use the fear to do something, useful. And so I ended up writing this last book just to say what the experience was like, because I felt that there were so many books about immigration which explain, the logic of immigration, the statistics, the data, but nobody really, or very few people tell you, in written accounts what the experience is like, which, and I remember one of the things that people used to ask me in those early days when I spoke no English, when they asked me where I was from and I said Iran, every single person would immediately say, "You must be delighted to be here." And it so crushed me when people said that, because nobody is delighted to be taken out of the place where, and I say this in the book, where our ancestors have been buried. Nobody wants to be in a place where, you have, you don't speak the language, you don't know the culture, you've never been, you never intended to come to. Um, and just conveying that sense of bereftness, despite the fact that, of course, eventually I was delighted to be here, but it took such a long time to get to that phase. So anyway, this was my roundabout way of saying that obviously I'm working for you, and I just learned that I am, and I think what you're doing is so important, and just teaching and telling people what this experience is like is a huge service.
Right. And so, wow. So we have a moment of connection, beautiful, natural connection. Let me ask you both this. The women of the world, we are celebrating International Women's Day. You both happen to be incredibly strong women who've taken your piece of a podium to make the world better for others. And yet women are being left out. I just read another UN report, and of course, I've come to really not trust UN reports. Their gender work tends to be better, but we're slipping backwards. Why do you think that's so?
I really struggle to answer this question, why we are going back. I have been witnessing it really heavy from the home I come from, Iraq. Like, I think the word power comes to mind. Over years, we are seeing women stepping into power. Women power is really scary because it's so inclusive. We care and we want to bring everyone at the table, and not necessarily that's what people of power want to see us doing. So I think it's like that's the first idea comes to mind. But I have been really struggling to seeing how my beloved home, Iraq, is going back on time on how to treat women. You see some things happening really shiny, but then when you dig deeper into things, you get really upset about what's happening. And I will also would like to add even more women of color. It's so real how undermined women of color are. Immigrants women really being undermined ongoing in big fields, even where we are supposed to be our voices centered, our leadership centered, but we do struggle. I'm sure Roya, Donna, you might share the same sentiment or not. Like, it took me clearly 14 years to prove that I am capable of leading. And it's not necessarily that could be that hard to
Right.
others. And I hate othering, but I want to make sure that people understand that being a woman of color, being a refugee, English is my second language. My background career is engineering, then teaching. Like, this humanitarian field is coming from my lived experience of knowing what it's mean to be welcomed, what it's mean to not be welcomed, and how we can really continue to not fix the system, but improve the system. And having people centered with lived experience in the work is really crucial, because we know how it's looked like when we are sided away from the real decision making and conversation. So I'm just really sharing my experience. It took really 14 years of hard work, of fighting to say, this is my space, I need to be in it, and this is why I need to be in it. And it should not be that hard for others. So it's like, for me, I am really, really dedicated to uplift and raise women in leadership, women who are refugees and immigrants in the field, in our field of human rights, specifically to welcome refugees and immigrants, because we know firsthand what it's looked like to be welcomed and not welcomed, and how we can really improve the system. I don't have the answer, Donna, but like, I feel like,
well, I'm sorry then.
we just need to,
I'm
yeah,
sorry
and
then.
we just need to change. We just really need to shift power. And we really need to do it
Oh,
collectively.
it's as simple as that. But we see when the shift happens, right? We take a step forward, it's a step back. I just wanted to pull one thread out of that and throw it over to Roya, because both of you grew up as young girls, right? We think in America that, you know, the way women are viewed has come away. It slides back, but we all know it's got a ways to go, right? We'll celebrate the progress. I don't want, right? But we know it's got a long way to go. But both of you, I think, grew up in far more oppressive environments than we have in America. And you come here, all right, and yet you're compounded by the virtue of you come from another country, you might have spoken another language. Roya, your experience as a young woman in Iran versus a young woman of heart now in America.
Yeah. I'm so glad you painted the contrast, because I think it really is important to make sure that even though we live here and we are across the oceans from practically the rest of the world, that there is another world, and there are experiences vastly not just different than ours, but in many ways in need of our attention. Because as much as we think we have steps to take in order to better our own lives as women in this country, there are women far worse off than we are, whose lives are boundlessly tied to our own. And unless we recognize that, and as you mentioned earlier, we recognize that there is this sense of global sisterhood that we need to develop, we'll all be worse off. But let me just answer the earlier question that you asked, which is, why are we slipping back? I think part of the answer may be that, for the longest time, we knew, and this is sort of a line out of the Broadway play Hamilton, we know what we're against, but what are we for? So it's easier to define ourselves against people, against ideas, against ideologies, and it's much harder to define ourselves for ideas, for a vision for the future. And I think, for the longest time, our world was about a world that, we stood against. Say, it was the Soviet Union, and we knew that we were the democratic world, and we wanted to keep away from the Soviets. We wanted to stay away from authoritarianism. We didn't want tyranny. We didn't want dictatorship. But once all of that was gone, maybe that created a sense of sort of aimlessness for the rest of us. Who are we now? As the play Hamilton says, once you no longer have to define yourself against something, then you have to start thinking who you are. And then we started thinking, about who we were, which was woman, Middle Easterner, Black, white, Asian. And then we became these disparate, distinct, separated entities. And I think that was a very good effort, right? Because we also need to have a sense of who we are, what we are, a sense of, all the disparate cultures that make up, our broader American culture. But if we fail to bring us all together, if we fail to recognize that we are still one despite our differences, if we fail to weave our own stories into one larger narrative, it means that we have learned nothing from history. It means that we have learned that no matter what our stories are, they mean nothing, and they add up to nothing unless we can fit it with the larger narrative of our own nation. And that's why we slip back when we start to get too self-involved with our own private narratives, with our own private suffering. We start to slip into individualism. It brings cultural isolation. It brings intellectual isolation. So it has been a great ride trying to, discover who we are, trying to kind of plant our individual flags down and say, this is what I am, this is what my community is, this is what my identity is. But
wow. As Barry said, wow. And Basma said, wow. I have to, I'm gonna just jump in here. Barry Weiss, who I am an acolyte of, gave a speech last week. I don't know, Roya, it was in New York, and I mentioned that to Roya because she lives not far from there.
I listened to it online.
It was extraordinary. And to follow up on your theme here, there was a quote from Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who, I'm just trying to find it. I just had it in front. Oh, here it is, right here. He said, to be a free person is to refuse to tell lies, to refuse to stand by as they are told. To be a free person is to live in truth. And what I hear you both speaking to is honestly a power of truth. The other thing Barry said, and this one I won't quote, but basically there is a difference between truth and lies. There truly is, right? And we have a responsibility to live into the truth, to elevate each other. And I think that's so powerful because as I listen to you both, I have to be honest, I feel emotional. And I'm trying to ask myself, what is this all touching in me? And perhaps anybody else who is also listening about the powerfulness of not being seen and wanting to be seen and wanting to contribute. And yet understanding that there are limits. We don't have to go into the immigration issue today in a country. That's one thing. But we're talking about the value of people, the value of our mothers, our sisters, our daughters, our nieces, right? Today we're focusing on women. And yet, as we said, when we elevate women, it does translate into this overall conversation you were both sharing about the respect for the equity of us all.
I really love everything is being said. Roya, I bring it back to the bigger we that you touched on. I really reflect on that a lot. And I think part of how I shifted my mindset when you are under threat and in fear, and when you are oppressed, all what you are thinking about yourself. Like you really want to survive, and every other pain in the world seem not as great as yours. So I think part of I think shifting from that, now you survived, you feel safe, either or, you either gonna really be part of the problem or be part of the solution. And I think that bigger we has really helped me because I start seeing that. And I think that's why part of WeaveTales name is weaving the stories together. Like if I don't understand or if I don't fully advocate for all people with forced displacement, I'm not gonna survive. The problem not gonna be solved. So I think it's really helped me when I understand and when I understood other people's pain. and how I am being part of a bigger problem, and how I can really take part of solving the bigger issue rather than just my issue. It's really resonate to hear you painting the picture in a really fantastic way, and I'm like reflecting on that bigger we and how we can take part of that.
Yes, the beauty of your words. Oh my goodness. Of course. Of course. Let me ask you this. I'm going to ask you two questions. So, Basma, I can give you a little chance to think of it. All right. Think about it. One, where does the courage come from? All of us who are listening thinking, my goodness, where does your courage come from to be able to speak up? I should share, Roya, that last year I wanted really a woman who can speak about the power of the young women in Iran who were standing up at the risk of their lives. And yet it was very hard to find that person who could speak up, who was not afraid, because there are repercussions around the world, right? People are watching. And your beautiful being, essence, poetry, everything, spirit walked into our lives, and we're grateful. Where does the courage come from? And here's the thing you should be thinking about, Basma. And we would love you to think about 2 or 3 things that we, as your fellow sisters, your fellow humans, can do to make a positive impact on women and girls in the world. Okay. So, Roya, your courage, where does it come from?
Basma said earlier in this conversation, why me? Why did I end up, winning the lottery and coming to America? And that's where the courage comes from, because both of us come from a place where none of the things we have here, none. And I'm not talking about the big things. I'm not talking about, a democracy. I'm not talking about fair and free elections. I'm talking about much lesser, smaller things. I'm talking about clean streets. I'm talking about, traffic lights that everybody respects. I'm talking about, roads that are, have smooth asphalt. I'm talking about, here's a simpler idea. I'm talking about the idea that the overwhelming majority of Americans who've been born and raised in this country take for granted.
Yes.
Nowhere in the world, you would be able to buy a sweater, wear it, and then after a week, take the sweater back to the store with the receipt and say, I don't want it. Nowhere in the world. Nowhere. And I know this doesn't shock you, but it shocked me when I first came to the United States. Somebody told me, if you don't like it, we can take it back. Let's go to the store. And I thought, are you crazy? They're going to arrest us. But why do we have that small and seemingly insignificant right? Because we have individual rights, we have civil liberties, we have a constitution that is designed around respecting the individual. And so where does my courage come from? It comes from the fact that I know what life can be somewhere else. And I know that I could have died 10 times over had I stayed there. So I feel like I am way ahead of everybody else by simply surviving those circumstances, and by simply breathing, and by simply knowing that everything I have here is a miracle. And that's what the likes of Basma and I can do for America. It's not just that we can, take care of the elderly because, the nursing homes are understaffed, or we can, mow the lawns or be doctors in hospitals. We can do all those things. But more importantly, we can offer a moral guidance about what are the fundamentally valuable things that this country, this society, however we may think it's lacking or it needs to improve, is giving the rest of us that is impossible to find elsewhere. That gives me courage, because I feel like you know, I won a lottery ticket by being here, by being able to access all these huge gifts that other people who haven't lived the lives that Basma and I have lived probably take for granted.
I won a lottery ticket. In sharp contrast to much of the rhetoric we hear today, that is a gift.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, Basma will tell you, right, Basma? I mean, could you and I look like this and have this sort of conversation where we were?
Yeah, no, it's really resonate to Roya's point, and I think going back to the responsibilities, like how we could make sure these stories are uplifted, shared, and people understand the struggle that immigration is not an easy thing. It's really a hard journey, and it's part of life. It's really we should celebrate immigration rather than fight it. I think, Donna, do you want me to answer the second question or also the
Sure.
same question?
No, no, go ahead.
I think like really my courage, adding to what Roya says, is really my daughters. I have two girls, 15 and 11. And I remember my first, uh, when I arrived, my daughter was like a year and a half, 2 years, and I was taking her to get milk. And I was threatened in the street, and told to go back. And I share it in my TEDx speech. Please look it up on TEDx Jacksonville. I stayed a week after at home, refusing to leave the house because I did not feel safe. And I think that's really like this picture and this incident never leaves my mind. I really remember a time where I'm like, I don't know where I am. I don't know where I belong. But I know that I don't want my daughter and any young girl to go through what I went through. And I want to make sure the community accepts and celebrate girls and refugee girls. I really wanted to make sure that our community is welcoming, and when we see someone who don't look exactly like us, we celebrate that, not fight it. And now my daughter is 15 years old. She is actually just graduated from the Youth Leadership Jacksonville. She is really active in the community and really trying to get the narrative out about how refugees girls are powerful. How to get people to support our work. There is a huge, amazing thing to celebrate in the United States, to be honest, at this moment. Last year in 2023, January 2023, the United States have the Department of State have really launched the Welcome Corps. The Welcome Corps is actually a program of the Department of State, and I am as the Deputy Executive Director at the Community Sponsorship Hub. We are leading the implementation of the program. We call it as the boldest innovation of 4 years of resettlement, because now, since January 2023, Americans, residents and citizens can come in a group of 5 and welcome a refugee themselves without the need and the support of agencies. So really, I have been really excited to support and seeing how this is really impactful. Since the launch, we have over 40,000 Americans stepped in, raised their hand and said, we want to welcome refugees. It just shows how this country is generous. And I am so happy to be part of the work. Actually, I'm going to put it in the chat. I am hosting a Women of Welcome Corps conversations celebrating the impact of how women have been standing to support welcoming refugees and really supporting the integration of refugees. So I am hosting 4 other women who have been really doing amazing work around the country. And how more women can really step in to support and welcome refugees and take part of the integration. So I'm pleased for myself.
That is fantastic. I love that. I want to recognize Norma Gonzalez, who has joined us. And you know, writing is writing, but somehow her name and her energy is just like bursting off the page. And I wanted to thank her for that. So Norma, I love your question here. You say what this is also eye-opening. Got that. I agree. What do you, let's say, choose to give and not repeat, and then honor with no guilt in this new generation of girls? So I'm not exactly sure. What do we take from this? Oh, I see. So based on your experiences, what do you take from your past, but what are you moving forward with the new generation of girls and women and for the future of the global world? Roy, you want to take a quick stab at that?
Sure. I think, at the risk of having to repeat myself, I really think we should begin to recognize that the time has come for us to make the global sisterhood, to kind of round the circle. We will not have the strength necessary to take on the challenges of the next 100 years or 50 years or 20 years for women, if we are distinct, separated groups of women in our own countries. We need to get connected. We need to create a global community by recognizing that our destinies are intertwined. That, for instance, last year when you brought me, Donna, to speak, I was talking about, what was happening in Iran. Women were rising up because they wanted to have the choice to dress code, which meant that they wanted to be able to take the hijab off, take the headscarf off, if they didn't believe in putting it on, and they wanted other women in the country to have the right to put it on if they chose to put it on. So the point that I keep emphasizing is no matter what woman you are in what country, choice has always been a struggle and a war front for women. In America, the issue of choice, it has a completely, different qualities. The question of choice here is about, do I have the right to decide what happens to my body, what happens to the child that I want to bring into this world. In Iran, the choice, it's still about choice, but a different kind of choice. It's about, can I or can I not decide for myself what I want to wear? So, but the important thing is to recognize that we are connected as women in one theme, in gaining the right to decide for ourselves. And that doesn't matter what country we're in. It is a right that we need to all together fight for. The moment we become disconnected, the moment we begin to think that, these American women who are fighting for whatever have nothing in common between those, Iranian women, Iraqi women, Afghan women elsewhere who are fighting for, for their own rights. The moment we lose the sight that we are in this together is what weakens us, is the moment we, as you said, slip away. And we need to bring us all together. We need to find the common themes between ourselves and try to, as much as we can, accentuate what we have in common rather than what we have that makes us distinct from one another.
And on that unbelievable thought, as we have, and Basma and I together embraced recently at a presentation we both made, a Jewish woman and a Muslim woman, friends forever, right? Both been in positions where fear has been instilled, but we rise above it. The three of us courageous, everybody here, right? Wanting to find the common themes of connectivity. And I actually think that is the most powerful of messages that we can leave on this International Women's Day. Let me just say some thoughts from the International Women's Day website. Some things we can do, which is providing women and girls with access to quality education and training, elevating women and girls' participation and achievement in sport, providing creative and artistic talent of women and girls, and addressing further areas supporting the advancement of women and girls. I think, I honestly, I find it difficult to understand when people can't see that how that values, that there's value in that for all of us. But we get to spend more time together if you choose, because on April 5th, Generation W, our national, global now, thought leadership event will be back. You can join us in Jacksonville at the University of North Florida. We will dig into this idea of believe, and everybody is really excited about it. You mentioned it, Roya, in your comment. Like you said, think of not what we are against, but what we are for. And when we do that, we have to know who we are. So we have to know what we believe in, right? How we believe and who we believe we are. So as I said previously, we have a special ticket offer through the 8th in honor of National Women's Day, a newly announced speaker. She is a return speaker from many, many years ago, highly acclaimed Dr. Heidi Hanna, who happens to be an expert in stress, anxiety, and depression. Her deep passion for this work's come from her own personal and early struggles, and she realizes that a healthy relationship with stress, we all can use that, a healthy relationship, and stimulation is a critical part of learning how to use challenges as opportunities for growth. She gave me she's going to like recharge our belief in health, in mental health, something like that. She's incredible. She's beloved. We hope you can see us. It's a great time. Go to our website to sign up. Either get a group of women if you're not going to make it to Jacksonville, and then together get on a chat together. It is a phenomenal day. It is a gift to yourselves. And what a better way. I should put that on the International Women's Day website, which is, gift for yourself, join Generation W, elevate women and girls everywhere. I want to thank from the bottom of my heart, Roya and Basma, for your beauty inside and out, for your courage, for your time, and for your authentic sharing of your stories today. Truly special. To everybody else, we thank you for being part of Generation W community. We'll see you again. We will be back. We're taking a break because we have so much to get ready for Generation W. Write this down. Here are all the dates coming up. You can put it on your calendar. Here is April 17th with Heidi Hanna. And then from then on, we have 5 more shows. And we'll look forward to gathering then. Until then, everyone, be well. Take care of you.